Angela, and this is Homeschool Unrefined. We created this podcast to change the conversation about homeschool. This is a place where we encourage each other to do less, be ourselves, embrace natural learning, and keep homeschool simple, real, and fun. We are longtime friends, Minnesotans, and practiced homeschool parents with our master's degree in education. We are an inclusive and non-sectarian podcast and community. We believe Black Lives Matter and affirm LGBTQ+ families. We hope this is a place where we can all learn and grow together.
This is episode 168, How We Homeschool with Iris Chen. We are going to get to that in just a minute. First, hello, Maren.
Hi.
I think you are up for our aha moment this week.
I am. And this one has been kind of a game changer for me, even though it's real simple. It's okay to not plan. It's okay to not plan everything, or maybe anything.
Wow. Okay. So are you you're a non-planner?
I really am a non-planner by nature. And although I have to say I like big idea plans, I'm great at big idea plans. So sometimes, and here's the thing, I don't always write everything down either. So my big ideas sometimes just stay in my head, or sometimes it'll look like what do you call those? Not a graphic. A graphic. Like I make a little graphic of what I'm thinking of in my head.
In your head.
In my head.
There's a picture.
And I draw that picture sometimes.
Okay. All right.
Of like what I want this year to look like or something like that. Or, it's just, it's what works for me.
Yeah.
And so I will often very loosely plan some things that feel like they'd be good right now for the beginning of the year. And especially with my kids, obviously, we do this together. What's gonna feel right? How are we gonna get the best learning and enjoyable learning starting right now? Because we don't know how we're gonna be feeling necessarily in January. I mean, we can kind of make predictions based on, the last couple of years of homeschooling, but we don't know. We don't know. I feel like there are so many times when kids take huge leaps in school or in our learning in homeschool, or you make really big plans and then it kind of just I don't want to say flops, but it's like a no-go, kind of like our kids are just not there. They're not ready for it.
Yeah. Or they were into a thing and they're no longer into the thing.
I think about this all the time with a good analogy is food. I have one daughter who I'm just like really desperate for her to like find things that are good to eat that are also healthy. And it's been a challenge. So as soon as she likes one thing, I plan by like getting that thing in bulk or whatever. And then like, not kidding you, the next day it often just goes away. That interest
don't like it anymore.
It's over. Yeah. And so we often have I have so many things in I have boxes of crackers. I just think of all the things. And so, and it's hard to let go of that waste too. It's just kind of a waste after that. Nobody's going to eat it anymore. And I think that's the same with sometimes when we plan, or maybe even just rigidly plan something that we feel that needs to happen. But if not everyone's on board, it's not going to happen anyway. Or it's just not going to be enjoyable. So it's okay not to plan.
It's okay not to plan. So you don't plan monthly or weekly or daily.
I do if it feels like the right thing to do.
Okay.
But I don't as a rule.
And you're not writing things down usually.
I'm really not writing things down. Sometimes at the beginning of the day, I'll say, here are the 3 things we're going to do today, or 4 things or whatever. But that was just off the top
what you thought of when you woke up that morning.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I hope that frees up any of the non-planners who are listening, because I think we can, get the idea that homeschool parents plan a lot.
Yeah. Or
like a teacher would.
Or that you should plan a lot.
Or that you should plan a lot. And if you're not a planner, then there's something wrong.
Right.
It's okay if you're not.
It's okay if you're not.
Yeah.
Yep.
You're just taking what comes at the moment.
Right. Exactly.
All right. Our sponsor this week is Elephants and Algebra, which you've heard us talk about before. I would have loved this last year if I had known about it, because I was looking for a math tutor for my kids, both of them, to just kind of take over the instruction. And that's exactly what they do. Ryan is the creator, and Ryan and other teachers work directly with your kids one-on-one with either a curriculum that you choose or one they choose 1 to 2 times a week.
That sounds amazing.
I know.
Yeah. Ryan has lots of experience too. And he's always thinking of creative ways to teach your children math. So you can either come with your own curriculum or have him decide what's going to work best for your kids. And it's so individual. It's such an individual plan. So amazing.
Right. And I think math is something that's intimidating to lots of homeschoolers, and this is the perfect thing to outsource. So if you are interested in checking them out, you can go to elephantsandalgebra.com, and you can find out everything about them there.
All right. Did you know we have a Patreon group just for supporters of our show? Our patrons get weekly access to us through lots of extra content, both on the Patreon website and in their podcast feed.
Right.
So, and then we also have lots of great discussions together. So not just from us, but everybody together, we've kind of formed a community, which has been really great. If you join Patreon today, you are going to have our last episode was a question and process. We don't call it question and answer anymore because we really process things. And it's all about socialization, which can be a hot topic in the homeschool world and outside of the homeschool world. So, get ready for a great discussion there.
Yes. And if you are interested in joining us on Patreon, it's just $5 a month for all those extra episodes and discussions. And you can go to patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined.
All right. Our guest today is Iris Chen. She is an author, unschooler, and founder of the untigering movement. After healing from the negative effects of authoritarian tiger parenting and unhealthy cultural expectations in her own life, she's now on a mission to empower others to untiger by promoting mental health, peaceful parenting, and self-directed learning for children. She recently moved back to California with her husband and 2 sons after 16 years of living in China. You can read more about her adventures in her book, Untigering, Peaceful Parenting for the Deconstructing Tiger Parent, and on her blog at untigering.com.
Maren and I have both read the Untigering book and have loved it. We think this book is probably one of our favorite for the homeschool parenting crowds. If you've not read it, you should definitely run and do that. So we were very excited to have Iris on, and we hope you enjoy this conversation. Well, welcome, Iris, to Homeschool Unrefined. We're so happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
All right, let's start by having you just tell us a little bit about yourself, like your family, where you live, what you do for work, things like that.
Sure. So I am in the LA area. We moved back from China about 2 years ago. So we were living in Asia for 16 years. My kids were born out there and lived their whole lives there up until 2 years ago. So I have 2 boys, a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's fun.
Awesome. And so how long have you, I know you've been homeschooling. How long have you been homeschooling? And how did that come about for you? How did you get started?
Yeah, so we were living in China. So I would say that I have been homeschooling from the start, at least partially, because they were never in school full time, because they went to a local kindergarten. And even when they went to the kindergarten, we would take them home in the afternoon and just read to them because we wanted them to be bilingual. We wanted them to, just learn some of the things that we grew up learning. And so, I would say we started right from the beginning. But in terms of like full-time unschooling, which is what I do, that didn't really happen until about four years ago. Yeah, so we started that because their schooling options in China had sort of run out. Like they couldn't attend the local school because they were foreigners and there were too many students. And so they couldn't accommodate the foreigners, at least in my district, my neighborhood. And then we didn't want to send them to the international school because it was way across town and expensive and a lot of different issues with that. And so we were running out of options, and I knew that homeschooling full-time was what I needed to consider. But I also knew my own tendencies to be very controlling and like needing to tick off all the boxes, and that it would be really stressful for me to be responsible for that. So we discovered, or I was doing some research, discovered unschooling, and I just really resonated with it. I really resonated with the principles of trusting your child, of knowing that they are innately driven to learn and be curious and figure out the world around them. And I think the respect and autonomy piece was also huge, you know, as I was shifting my parenting, to recognize that this was also an area where I wanted to honor their autonomy and honor their consent, work together with them in collaboration and partnership instead of assuming that I, as a parent, know best and impose certain things on them. So, yeah, I think that's how we got started.
So it's been a real journey for you because you weren't always this way. You didn't always have this philosophy. So I would love for you to speak a little bit more about that because I know in the Chinese culture, you know, there's more authoritarian parenting. And so I'm assuming that's what you grew up in and what you were immersed in. And, you know, and so I would love to hear how that transformation has been for you. And like, does it feel always right? Or do you like question yourself as you're doing it, you know?
Sure. So I guess I didn't really introduce myself in the beginning in terms of like the fact that I wrote a book called Untigering and I run a social media page called Untigering, and it's really to describe my own journey of deconstructing from tiger parenting and embracing peaceful parenting and self-directed education. So for those of you who aren't familiar with tiger parenting, it comes from Amy Chua's book, The Battle Hymn of the Tiger Mother. And so she writes from the perspective of a Chinese mom and talks about tiger parenting as Chinese parenting, which is really authoritarian, demanding, strict, high expectations, all of those things. So yeah, that was definitely something that I grew up with and probably was doing to my own children for many years. So I think for me, I saw some value in it, you know, growing up with a lot of rules, a lot of restrictions, but also seeing how I didn't get into a lot of trouble. You know, it seemed like my life turned out well because of that type of parenting. But as I was parenting my own kids, just really they pushed back. You know, they didn't accept my control. And then I think that was a wake-up call for me to recognize the many ways that as a child I felt disempowered, I felt disrespected, I didn't have a voice, I couldn't make choices. And so really coming to a place where I had to heal from a lot of, you know, the parenting that I received and shift my own parenting for my children.
Yeah, and then I just heard you say a little earlier that your natural tendency maybe for homeschooling would be to check off all the boxes just for your own personality is like that. So was that hard to kind of, I don't know, unlearn?
Definitely. I think it was, with unschooling, we talk a lot about the deschooling process. And for those of us who did well in school and who, learn how to thrive and function and survive in that environment, we learned to tick off the boxes. We learned to ask what the expectations were and then meet them and be the overachiever, do everything that was expected of us. And so it was really hard to shift that mindset and to release those expectations. And in some ways, unschooling gave me permission to just let go of it all. Whereas I feel like if I had tried to do it halfway, that would have been harder, at least for my personality. But just saying forget it all. I'm not going to have any of these boxes or any of these expectations, and I'm just gonna, observe my children and empower them to do the things that they love to do. I think in some ways was the radical approach that I needed in order for me not to fall back into those patterns. And that's not to say that I didn't. I mean, when I first started, there were still certain things that I couldn't let go of. I still need to have them do math every day, and I still need to, read to them every day. Or, another thing for me was piano. They still needed to learn piano for some reason. But then the more I practiced this, the more I recognized that me just forcing them to do these things wasn't consistent with what I truly believed.
Right.
And even though I was doing it out of fear, I was reacting out of fear and anxiety and wanting them, making them do the math worksheet every day just because I didn't want them to fall behind. But I guess the more that I pressed into the principles of unschooling, the trust that is involved, the more I realized I can't do this. It didn't align with my values. It went against my conscience. And so I realized a lot of the work that I had to do was for myself, dealing with my own anxieties, my own biases, my own preconceived notions of what learning looks like, and do that work on the back end instead of on my children.
Right. Okay, so, and I don't think we talked about this question at all ahead of time, but it just popped in my head while you were talking about this. What kind of things do you see as an effect of your change in how you approach homeschooling? Like, do you see those effects now, with your kids and with yourself? How does that feel now?
Oh, it feels so different because I think the way I was homeschooling before was very much, I have a lesson plan in mind. I have a certain goal that I want to achieve in a certain time period. And if they were not cooperative, I mean, I think they could feel how coercive it was, where they had to sit in a certain position. They had to do what I told them to do. And in those moments, I would become very much the tiger parent. I would be like, sit down, erase that, that's wrong. I would just be very controlling and could feel that need for control and perfection in those moments. And so it was just not pleasant. And I think that's the reason why I, from my previous experience of homeschooling part-time with my children in that very controlling type of parent way, I realized I couldn't do that full-time. It would just ruin our relationship. It would cause so much conflict and tension at home. And so what I have experienced now through the years is just a lot of peace, a lot of joy, a lot of, anxiety and doubts on my part too, that again, I need to work through as I step back and see them do things that are not traditionally schoolish, educational, quote unquote, learning, But again,
sometimes is it like, are you wondering, I mean, this is what I go through when I feel that way. I think, okay, what's worse, the anxiety that I'm feeling about not living up to some sort of standard, or like the damaged relationship or the disempowerment of my own children? What's worse? I think I can handle that anxiety for a little bit and then like give myself a pep talk and move on.
Exactly. So I think it's not that we need to get rid of it by then submitting to those voices in our head. You know, I think it's really about pausing and questioning, like, why do I feel this way? Where are these anxieties coming from? Are they true? Do I actually believe that my child will never learn to read or that they won't be able to function or that they will spend the rest of their lives playing video games or whatever? So to question a lot of those fears and assumptions about learning and about like projecting the worst case scenario on our children instead of enjoying their enjoyment and entering into it with them and celebrating it. So I think a big thing that I had to learn through this process was non-judgment, learning to not judge. And that's like very difficult for a personality like mine, where everything is like, it's either good or bad or better, and wanting to place those values and expectations and judgments onto my children and the things that they're interested in. But again, with unschooling, really invited to remove those labels. And it's like all of life is learning, not just in these foolish ways. So how can I embrace every experience as something that is beautiful and that will help them grow as people, and that gives them the skills that they need for life.
And you really start to pick up on, start to notice everything, I'm sure. Everything that they're learning throughout the day. It's just all so valuable. Suddenly, it's all valuable.
Yes. And I think in the beginning, maybe it is like, oh, I need to put that in a box. It's like, oh, okay, like, oh, yes, they're learning math because I see it here, or they're learning some language arts skills here. But I think as we enter into it more, we can like even blow those boxes off and not need to label it, and not even need to say like they need to prove some sort of learning to me, but just to embrace it all and learn to live life.
Good. So good. So speaking of in the box things, do you use any curriculum, or what are your books, or what are the resources you use and really appreciate?
Yeah, so especially when we first started, I would read aloud to my kids every morning. And so we would choose different books and based on their interests or based on things that I thought they would like. Nowadays, I haven't been reading to them as much, but definitely if I ever do, it's based on something that I think they would like, not just something that's like grade level or, recommended by what their grade should be. Other than that, like it's really based on their interests and resources that they find themselves. If they ask me for something, or if I see something that they're really into and they want more resources, then I'll go find a library book on it or find a out-school class or something like that. But it's not something where I come in with my own ideas beforehand and say like, oh, this is something that I think you should do, and expect you to do it. So there hasn't been any of that.
Do you feel like this is, I know each stage of parenting brings new challenges, and I feel like for me at least, once I thought I kind of like had it figured out, then my kids get older and they move into this new stage, and I'm wondering for you with teens and tweens, do you feel like things have changed a bit And how is that working?
Yeah, absolutely. I know for myself, as they've gotten older, I've felt more anxiety because then it feels like they're like inching towards adulthood, and in comparison to maybe their peers who are in school, the things that they're learning or into are very different. And so I've had to talk myself down a lot and talk with other unschoolers, other homeschoolers to really help with that anxiety. But yeah, like my oldest in particular was really wanting more social interaction. And I think part of being a teenager or tween is about wanting that.
So normal. Yeah.
More social. Yeah. And we had been stuck at home for, a year and a half with the pandemic, so it was very understandable. So even though I loved that slow rhythm of our family and that connection that we had, they were really seeking something outside the home with other peers. And so we actually found a self-directed learning center for them to attend, and they've been doing that 3 days a week now.
Oh, wow. My goodness. That sounds amazing.
So,
I
want to hear more about the self-directed learning
center.
Area?
It must be close to home.
It's not that close. I mean, it's a 30-minute drive away.
Okay.
But then my kids started taking the metro, and like there's all of these life skills that have they've stepped into and been motivated to learn, even though like in our little sheltered bubble, we wouldn't have necessarily had them do those things, but because they're motivated to go into the school in downtown, and they're learning all these, life skills and pushing themselves in ways that wouldn't have necessarily felt natural, but because they were motivated to meet that goal and were excited enough about that experience to overcome some of the fears. So,
and then that's their learning. That's their learning. They've decided what their learning is because that's what they want to work on. And how awesome that you have that resource, even 30 minutes away, is awesome. It's so awesome.
Yes, we're very privileged and very,
It's really nice to have those. I hope someday there are those are the resources we'll have everywhere.
It'll be abundant.
I really do. Yes. I think it would be, I mean, just think of the mental health and just the learning that would happen with, it would just like take so much pressure off of the kids, the teachers. I mean, just so many things. Imagining a world.
So, speaking of that, is that your community of unschoolers in your area, or how are you finding community among like-minded folks where you live?
Right. So when we were living in China, we had grown up. There's like, a foreign expat community where many of us had to homeschool.
Yeah.
So there was a homeschool community there that my kids grew up in, and we would meet together once a week at least, and other times for the kids just to hang out. And so that was really my community, and my kids' community back in China. And when we came back, because I had been blogging and doing things online, I connected virtually with some people in LA who were also unschoolers. And so, I got to meet them. But then, of course, the pandemic hit and all of that. And that group, the kids were a little bit younger. And so things like park days or play days didn't really work for my children anymore. And also their personalities going into a new environment where it was like they'd see each other like maybe once every other week or something like that. They just didn't feel comfortable in building relationships that way.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I think that's why I really wanted to find like a small, consistent group of other kids who were around each other a lot,
Yep.
so that they could build those relationships. And so that's really why I'm very thankful that we found this particular social setting and learning environment for them, because I think it fits their personality. Whereas there were other self-directed learning options, homeschool co-ops or homeschool centers where you can send your kids to learn a particular subject. But I think, again, because our main goal was for social interaction, those places didn't make sense for us.
Yep.
We weren't all that they weren't all that interested in the subject per se. They just wanted, friends to hang around.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. A lot of times that's the thing with homeschooling. We're getting everything we need at home academically or for our minds. There's this aspect of, it's definitely not socialization. I think that word gets thrown around too much, but I just think cause my kids are great at talking with lots of people. They're very good socially interacting with people, but it's just the community building that we so need. So yeah, good for you for finding that. Cause I think that's a big job for a homeschool parent is, it's a lot of work. Right. So could you tell us a little bit about, I know you talked about the place that your kids are going to 3 days a week, but what would be a typical day at home with your kids?
Yeah. So at home is very, very free. So they wake up on their own now. They make their own breakfast if they're hungry, and then they just jump right into what projects they have or the things that they're into, which right now is a lot of Minecraft, a lot of drawing. They love to draw on their iPads and make comics. And so they watch YouTube videos. So pretty much it's they're right into it. And and then I think there was a time when we felt like they were spending too much time on their screens. They were becoming zombies. And so we just had a discussion with them, our bodies and our minds, and we need different things. We need to move our bodies sometimes, and we can't just be sitting and looking at a screen. And so we just encourage them to take a mid-morning break. So they take a half-hour break at 10:30, 10 o'clock or something like that. And they just grab a book, sit outside, just take a break to engage in something else. Yep. And they're right back in it until lunchtime. So for us, meal times are just our family time to connect. And so we always have meals together when we're all home. So we have lunch together and dinner together. And so those are times for us to connect and see what's been happening throughout the day. And then back into it in the afternoon, and they take another break, and we just encourage them to exercise more. So for about an hour, they go out, we have a trampoline, they play handball or whatever is available to them, and they do that for about an hour. And then sometimes they help with dinner. They have, different household responsibilities. And in the evening, we just try to keep it really low-key family time. We might play games together. We might watch a TV show together. But it's not us on our screens doing separate things. I think we just came to a family agreement where in the evenings, it would just be more family to do other things. Yep. So, that's pretty much it.
I really like that because I feel like you seem really good at having some boundaries around their time, even though their time is their own. Exactly. I don't know, having them have the break and having them go outside to exercise, and then evenings being the family time and the meals. I just think that's really smart to have these. It seems like you have rhythms of rhythm to your day. It's not a strict schedule, but it's a rhythm that they all know, like, oh, now it's time for dinner together, or, now we're doing family time. And so I'm sure that's probably been hard for you to come to, or like there's been some, like discussions or whatever. It might have been contentious a little bit. I understand that, but it just seems like when it's the family rhythm, there's less of pushback maybe from the kids. Yeah.
And when there are the family discussions too, where it's not just like we've decided on this rule.
We've decided.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so definitely, engaging them. Like we went through the problem solving process together and asked them, okay, well, this is the issue, and what can we do about it? And so there was definite buy-in, and now that we had established this rhythm in our family, there isn't much pushback. Like we don't have to tell them, okay, now it's time to stop or whatever. In general, I mean, sometimes we have to do that.
Yes.
But for the most part, they're taking their own breaks. Like even if we don't say anything, they take their own breaks. They go out. So I'm
That's
really
amazing. That's so good to hear, because I think we as parents often think that the only way our kids will take a break is if it is enforced, or, the rule is set and then it's enforced by the parent. So there is a way to empower your kids to get on board with it, to be on board, to help make the decision, and for them to even live that out and follow through with that decision. That's so powerful.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is also us inviting our children to be more attuned to themselves.
Exactly.
In some ways, because sometimes, like, they're so engrossed in something that they don't realize, like, oh, my neck is really tight, or I'm hungry, or whatever it is. And so, to show that, like, these boundaries or these breaks that we have are really for their own good. I mean, they don't really do anything for us as parents. It's really for them. And so how can we help them feel better in their bodies and to enjoy and feel more, connected to themselves and all of it.
Yeah, and for them to have that experience at ages 11 and 13, to have that awareness before even going into adulthood. They're going to have had so much practice. They're going to know what they need. Yeah, that is really huge. A lot of adults don't have that right now. So what a gift. That's so awesome.
I know. Yeah, I just wanted to share the story from yesterday because my younger child decided to go an extra day into the self-directed learning center because there were some friends there that were going to leave that day. And my older son decided not to go. And when I asked him why, he was like, I just knew that I needed a break, and I was just really impressed that he knew, like, his social limits, he knew his body limits enough to not sort of just have that FOMO and do things because it would be fun, but he knew, like, I shouldn't go because I wouldn't enjoy myself and I need to break that home.
Wow, that's such a win. Parenting win. Good job.
I think we were at 30 minutes.
Yeah,
so I feel like we should be done.
Yeah,
should we wrap this part up?
Let's do it. Yeah, that's great.
All right. Well, thank you, Iris, for sharing your wisdom with everybody. We really appreciate you being here. And we've talked about your book before, but could you tell everybody where to find you and the name of your book again?
Yes. So I have a blog called untigering.com. You can find me there. I'm also on Instagram and Facebook at Untigering. And my book is called Untigering Peaceful Parenting for the Deconstructing Tiger Parent.
Yeah.
And you can find it anywhere where you buy books. So Amazon or Barnes & Noble. It might even be in your local bookstore, so you can take a look there.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and we do have an extra conversation with Iris in our Patreon community. Those patrons have that right now in their podcast app. You can get that too by going to patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined.
Yes.
All right, let's get to our LTWs, our loving this week.
Yes.
Maren, what are you loving this week?
Okay, I am loving, it is Windex Outdoor Window Cleaner.
Okay.
So this is something you hook up to your hose and you spray it on your windows, your outside windows, the outside part of your windows. And this is great, especially for us because we have a lot of windows that are way up high, number one, and they're really hard to clean. And so this is so awesome. I don't know how they do it and how it works, but it is amazing. It doesn't make streaks. You just hook it up to your hose, you turn on your hose, and you spray your windows, and it works. Like, oh my goodness. Our water was just so dirty coming off our windows when we did this. And it was actually like kind of fun. The kids all came out and watched us do it. Watch me do it.
Okay. So you don't have to then squeegee or
You do not
wipe.
squeegee. It just dries on its own without any streaks.
Okay.
I know.
Is this going to put
It's
window
like
washers out of
mind-blowing.
business? That's awesome.
I know.
Because
It
we
is
pay somebody
awesome.
to wash our windows. And now I'm like,
Yeah. Well,
There's a
I was going to
product?
do the same thing. I was going to
Okay.
hire someone, and I just didn't want to. I was like, there's got to be something out there. My mom told me about this. And
Okay.
it's really just
do you just
a
get
miracle.
Get it at Target or Home Depot or something?
You can get them. I think so. I think I got
Okay.
mine either at Target or Amazon. Can't remember. right now.
That is mind blowing.
I know it. I know. And I was like, I don't even care. Well, like my youngest daughter was doing it for a while because there's just a little nozzle, and you can, if you flip it one way,
Uh-huh.
it will spray the Windex out with the water. And
Okay.
then you flip it again, and it rinses it. So then it just comes, the water comes out, and then you rinse it all off. Well, so my youngest was loving this so much, but she was kind of using a lot of the Windex.
Yeah.
Because it was just like so fun to watch. It was getting sudsy and stuff like that. And at first I was like, we can't waste all the Windex. But I was like, this is so much cheaper than hiring somebody. This is fine. It's okay.
Yeah.
If we use a little extra.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and it
Too
was
bad.
just an experience. It was like really fun. And it honestly took 20 minutes to do our whole outside.
Could you tell after you went inside?
I could tell. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Completely.
That's the best feeling.
Although we have not, I wish there was something magical
indoor
like this for
version.
the indoor version. Exactly. Because I could still see a lot of fingerprints. I mean, there's fingerprints and I know where they're coming from. The inside. Yeah, totally.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yes. Okay. Angela, what are you loving this week?
My LTW is a book called Unbound by Tarana Burke.
Okay.
And I listened to the audio version, which was amazing. Tarana Burke is the Black woman who founded the Me Too movement. Mm-hmm. And this is her memoir. And what is great about this book compelling, is that it is a story that needs to be told. So, her work is around helping Black girls, mostly Black girls, deal with sexual abuse or violence or their stories. Mm-hmm. And that's the work she's been doing since before we heard of the Me Too movement in 2017. She had been doing it much prior to that. And so that the memoir is about this story, which is really important, needs to be heard. And then, the Me Too movement kind of went national in about 2017. Right. And so she was kind of thrown into the spotlight then. And so anyway, the story needs, is amazing and, interesting and important to listen to, but also she is a phenomenal writer. So so it is just, I feel like that combination is kind of magic.
It is.
It reminded me of Know My Name by Chanel Miller.
Oh, yes.
Which I think you read that one too. That was her memoir. And then she was also a really good writer. So I just think I think we all have a lot to learn from this memoir. So I think it's like important.
Yep.
And I think it's also interesting, and it's also well written, and it's also great on audio. So I think we should all listen to this.
It's like a winner all around.
I want everyone to listen to it
Okay.
or read it. So if you haven't, and it just came out like, I don't know, a month ago maybe.
Okay.
So she's making the rounds on like podcasts and stuff. You may have heard her, but it's really, really good.
Okay. That's on my list. Thank you.
All right. Great. Well, thank you everybody for listening. You can find us on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram at Homeschool Unrefined. You can also find links to everything that we talked about in our show notes on our website at homeschoolunrefined.com. And we will see you next week.
Thanks for listening. Homeschool Unrefined is created and produced by Maren Gorse and Angela Sizer. Amanda Ginn is our content and marketing strategist. This podcast is listener supported. Join our growing community at patreon.com/homeschoolunrefined.
We donate 10% of all Patreon income and product sales to The Conscious Kid, a Black and Brown-led organization that has been instrumental in our own evolution and in leading the way in both ideological and tangible change with their work in parenting and education through a critical race lens.
No matter how you homeschool, you are exactly who your kids need. You're doing great.